only half a day away from the...
Sir, could you explain the modalities of the submission of maps and the territorial discussions which are due to start this evening?
Yes, I can. It's a very important moment. Again, another historic. So we get a couple of historics in a short row. Because I will do that, but I will first say that never before we've had an exchange of maps or a presentation of maps created by the Cypriot delegation themselves. Because if you remember, as many of you do, the Annan Plan times, the final map, or the different maps that led up to the final map of the Annan 5 plan was proposed by the UN, not by the Cypriots themselves. This time, loyal to the principle that as I've been saying before, every sentence, every word, every comma is written by Cypriots. The maps that will be presented between the sides today are maps that they have developed based on their conversations in Montpellier and after. So this is very important because, please understand this, for one side, a big part of the historical trauma that led to, that people have been living with for generations is the loss of land where people used to live. Land and property where they used to live, which is a big emotional trauma for many people. At the same time, today, a number of people have been living their lives normally for generations, 42 years maybe, in exactly the same place. People who themselves might have been displaced from the south, who have now established new lives. And it's important to know that if you are less than 84 years old, most of your life has happened after 1974. It's only if you're 84 or older that most of your life was before that. So we are dealing with an issue which is highly charged on both sides. One side probably, or more than probably, ready to present an exchange, let's say giving away of territory that it has been holding for all these years and where people live. And another side about regaining access to territory that they won't have. So it's an emotionally charged issue. And then, through this long introduction to your question, we will meet in this afternoon session in a special room. It will be the leaders and me and one cartographer from each side who will then do the formal presentation, and the cartographers will then help identify that the agreed conditions that has to be met are met. And when that is happening, the maps will be transferred to a vault here at the UN and being only in the possession of the United Nations, but it will be seen by both sides and verified by the two sides' cartographers. And that is what is going to happen, and then we will take it from there. Okay. Was there I think there was a follow-up.
Go ahead.
It was just a then what? Then what happens? They go into a vault.
And then we will continue discussing all issues.
And what happens with the maps? And what
they
happens
will.
With the territory?
Okay. No, but this is. I think many people have this question. The maps are then known to the two sides, and they know whether the agreement they have on the general parameters of these maps are being fulfilled. The purpose of the exchange among the three cartographers who are experts on reading maps, one from the UN, one from each side, is to verify that these criteria have been fulfilled. The very final map is the later outcome of the overall process. But then we know that we are what we call within reach. And I must say, I won't say more that saying that my strong expectation that it will be what we will call within reach. But these maps will not be presented publicly because of the extreme sensitivities of the issue. And I also like to say that some of you have seen, there has been stories that the maps have already been exchanged, and even people who have publicized maps in the media, those maps are not correct, and there have not been any exchange of maps at this stage. I have not seen the final maps, and nor had anybody else involved in this process, of course, apart from the people who are about to prepare them.
The gentleman there.
Hi,
Can you introduce yourself?
Stefanos Evribidou, Cyprus Mail. Could you tell me, please, about tomorrow's conference? Is there a specific concept or framework or proposal that the guarantor powers and Cypriot sides will start talking about on security and guarantees? And if not, how will the process go?
So over some months and even more over the last weeks, and even more than that again over the last days, there have been a series of interactions between all relevant players who will be here tomorrow about the issues to be discussed, trying to test out positions and see where they are. And some of them has happened with the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who, again, I would like to reiterate, today he has been 11 days in office. He has spent more than half of those days, partly or wholly, on Cyprus issues. And he has been, together with me, in direct contact with the foreign ministers of all guarantor powers and of the Mr. Anastasiadis and Mr. Akinci. So we come, in that sense, prepared to the meeting, but we are not at this stage discussing one specific text which will then be agreed. That has to evolve from the early stages of the conference.
Introduce yourself, please.
Isaac Arpidis from Antenna TV Greece. I was wondering if you have any indication or any information if finally the leaders of Greece, Turkey and Britain will join the conversation. I speak about Theresa May, Mr. Erdogan and Alexis Tsipras.
Well, I know for a fact that they are all following very closely, and they have themselves been directly involved among each other over the phone and with their experts and with us and my Secretary General in this issue. So they are definitely involved, even if they are not physically in Geneva tomorrow. And I think what I can say is that the way these things normally happen is that you do much of the preparatory work at a level below what we call the principles, and the principles will come in at a later stage, either to be part of a sealing of an agreement, or if you need to escalate to a level up in order to get to that agreement. But they are positively engaged. I mean, they are engaged with the view to contribute to finding solutions. That's what I can say for sure. And I would reiterate again that now that the fact that they will all be foreign ministers level is because the guarantors in their conversations have agreed to meet at the same level to avoid any confusions about, because a foreign minister is a foreign minister, and I can say that as a former foreign minister myself.
So still there is a possibility to come even during the weekend?
Sorry?
So still there is a possibility for them to come even during the weekend?
Well, I am not the spokesperson of either, but I know they will be following closely and they would like this to be solved. So in principle, yes, but I'm not, by saying that, I'm not giving you any kind of secret message. I'm just saying that it can happen and it cannot happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Turn off your mic, please. No, the New York Times. Nick?
Good afternoon. Nick Cumming-Bruce, New York Times. You emphasized on Monday the important link between the talks over the first 3 days and talks that would take place in the latter part of the week. To what extent has the lack of clarity, if you like, on the part of the guarantor powers about what they want to achieve, do you think been a key factor in slowing the conclusion of talks in the first 3 days?
But I don't necessarily subscribe to the assumption that they have been slow. I mean, these talks have their own dynamics, and I happen to know them quite well because I spend most of my days with these people discussing it, and there are difficult issues. And but generally, as I said, I think we are now more or less where I was hoping to be now, maybe a few hours delay, but nothing dramatic, and we have many hours to go, and they are dedicated to work till late. So I think we will be able to be where we should be when today is over. I mean, of course, I can say that with even more comfort at midnight, but that is my sense, particularly after having experienced a very productive and constructive morning session. Of course, while the primary focus of the discussions we've been having so far has been on the 5 chapters, there has also been a brainstorming on security and guarantees. And again, because of the sensitive nature of the issue, I don't want to say much about the content, but I want to say that it was the quality of that discussion was the best I have ever heard on that particular topic in the Cyprus talks. And I think the reason is that people are now actually preparing for this, that this might actually happen, and that means you have to go from your traditional opening position to actually start looking for ways to solve it.
The blonde lady there, yes, please.
Stella Mikhail from Suga IPC. Mr. Aita, there has been a confusion who convenes the conference because of a statement you made on Monday referring to the leaders. Would you like to clear to us who convenes the conference for the security tomorrow? Thank you.
The United Nations, of course. We are in the Palais des Nations, as you might have noticed, Stella, and we are here, and the Secretary General is coming, and I work for the Secretary General, and we convene the conference and nobody else.
AP.
Good afternoon. This is Jamie from Associated Press. I was hoping if you could, you mentioned earlier that you've touched on, if I understood you correctly, you've touched on all of the subjects and you have solved some of them. Could you tell us which ones have been solved? And we just had a statement a few minutes ago from Mr. Juncker who says that this is the last chance. Do you agree with that?
Let me take the first. We have touched on all issues, yes, some deeper and some not equally deep, but basically we focused on the most difficult ones. So the ones that we gave less attention to are those we know we will solve quite easily because we're practically there and we're talking about more or less technical outstanding issues, which is not to suggest they're not important, but they have less political drama. So while we have touched on everything, and I already mentioned security and guarantees, I would say governance, property, and now this afternoon territory have been, as they should, the key focus of our attention. We have made a number of them are, number of issues within each chapter have been solved. But I do not think I would right now at the press conference when the meeting is still going on try to make an inventory because again, as a general statement, one achievement may be more popular on one side than another one on another side. So if I make a selection, I know what's going to happen after a few years in Cyprus. So I will leave it at that, but I'm happy with it. That's my message. Is it the last chance? Well, that's the kind of things that historians know best in 100 years. And I generally think to make, on my side, one should be a little bit careful, but what I am absolutely convinced about is that this is the best chance, and that I cannot see anything that would suggest that the chance is getting any better by waiting 4 months or 8 months or 2 years or 42 years or 52 years, as has been tried before. There is simply nothing in the trend lines that I see internationally that suggests that the world is getting more constructive, that people are coming together more, that the problems are more easily overcome, that we get the world leadership that is, more helpful. So I do not really see what would be gaining from waiting. So in that sense, I have, let me say, strong sympathy for what Mr. Juncker says, without necessarily wanting to issue a statement on behalf of, future historians.
Quick follow-up. I have a long list. Jamie.
One of the key questions was a rotating presidency. Could you tell us if that has been addressed or solved?
You had the question earlier about which issues were addressed and resolved, and I gave an answer which I thought was a very good one.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. And then the gentleman with the red tie. Please introduce yourself.
You. Sarah Stefanini with Politico Europe. So we've all heard and understood that this isn't really the end of the process. It's just a big part of it. But once this conference ends, whether it's tomorrow or this weekend, what should we expect if it's a success? What are you looking for to tell you that it is good or that it's not as good as you hoped?
I will answer that, although answering that, of course, can put me in trouble in a week's time. But I think first I want to define what is this, because there is no defined end date. It's not like Saturday or Sunday or Monday or any other date is the end in a physical sense. It depends on how much time it takes. But if you accept that as the premise of what this is, I would say that this is the time where, as a minimum, the Cypriots are able to overcome all their outstanding internal issues and to agree with the guarantor powers and other interested parties, what is the framework, security arrangement for the islands, so that a comprehensive political agreement can be sought. The comprehensive political agreement will probably still take some time, because even with full political agreement at the leaders' level, you need to work on the constitutional text, you need to work on details, there's a lot of implementation work that has to be presented, and only then you could announce a referendum to the communities in Cyprus. So don't expect that we will be walking home from Geneva, or rather flying to Cyprus with the comprehensive settlement in our hands, but we will go home with the sense that it is coming, because we've overcome those obstacles which created the question mark, and what we now have is some homework to do in order to be ready to present this as a comprehensive package. I think this is kind of the goal that we are looking at, but I repeat, so everybody heard it, this, I will not measure it on the specific date. This is when the phenomenon, the conference, is brought to an end, whenever that happens. And what has happened before, of course, in conferences, is that you use more time because there's more work to do, and then you solve it later, but inside the room of a conference.
The gentleman with the red tie, introduce yourself.
Sert Açak'tan Euronews. The case has always been for the Cyprus talks is that nothing is solved until everything is solved. Are the parties still insisting on this principle? That's my first question. And the second one is that you said it's within reach when we were talking about the maps. Can you be more specific about that? What is exactly within reach? The whole map issue, or some specific thing about the map? Thank you.
The principle, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed, is actually an excellent principle, and I've been involved in many negotiations, that it's extremely helpful, because it means that for a political leader or for relevant players outside, they have different interests, and they have different core asks, and logically they also have certain things which is not so difficult to accommodate the other. But you can only do that in a comprehensive setting. And since it's physically impossible to discuss every issue at the same time, you try to take down one after another, but always conditional, on the assumption that at the end of the day everything is agreed. This is the way it was done in Colombia talks and in many other conversations that I've been involved in.
Then how can you say we already solved some things?
So when we say that, we say, that, okay, I have to be a little detailed for those. This is something all the Cypriot journalists know by heart, but we have a very structured set of chapters, 6 chapters, and many subheadings, which are perfectly agreed as headings. And then in the course of the negotiations, the sides present a view, and then comes a counter view. And the way we do it is, if the proposal was Greek Cypriot, it comes in blue font, and if it's in Turkish Cypriot, it comes in red. And eventually, as we agree, we turn it into black. So that means when you see black text in these hundreds of pages of agreement that we carry around, it means it has been agreed, but under, of course, the premise that everything is agreed. It's not like a commitment that you can run away from or come away from if there is no settlement, but under the assumption of all black, this is black. And it's an important principle that once it's black, you leave it black, or you agree to change it. Because at times we discover that something we thought was a good idea was not a good idea. And then if we agree to that, we can change it to a new black. But you will not take from black to red or black to blue, because black is black. And in that technical, long technical answer means that it's agreed as in, if the other issues are now agreed, this is now a compromise that has been, or a condition that has been set.
Okay, I've got Lisa, and then the gentleman in the front. Lisa, introduce yourself, please.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Lisa Schlein, Voice of America. First, please, I'd like a clarification on the map. I'm not quite clear whether the map has been reconciled or whether work still, I mean, they're going to go into the vault, right? But does work still need to be made in terms of reconciling the possibly divergent opinions on each side as regard to the final map? That's the first question. And then the second is more technical, and housekeeping. It has to do with what time does the conference begin tomorrow? Will there be public statements that we can attend, listen to, and report on, or is everything going to be done in behind closed doors, which will make us very unhappy because we won't have much to report on?
Sorry, before can I just say, please keep your phones down. We have cameras behind, and they need to film. Mr. Éϊντε, sorry for that.
Maybe you will go through the details after, but I can answer the other question. So, in the Montpellier discussions, we arrived at an understanding of the volume of territory that would be allocated to each constituent state. Just as a reminder, we're creating one country, a bizonal, bicommunal confederation, in which there will be two constituent states. So the seen from the outside world, it's one country. But what we've been discussing is the internal administrative division between the Turkish Cypriot and the Greek Cypriot constituent state. So the question, since the outer limits of the country is obviously defined since it's an island, the question on maps is where does the administrative division go between the northern and the southern part. And the Montpellier discussion led to something very close to a full agreement on the volume, with a deviation that the two sides agreed. One was 0.5% more, one was 0.5% less, which means an overall deviation of 1%, which is very limited. And the agreement was then that when they came to the time of presenting maps, they will describe a map or present a map that fulfills this volume criteria. Okay, but there are many ways. There are several ways of drawing a line which corresponds to a certain percentage. So what we do not know, and I think the assumption quite openly, and there's no drama in this, is that they will not be identical, because the same volume can be drawn in different ways. This will be the entry point, and then hopefully, when time is ripe, which I hope is soon, they will be able to reconcile completely so that there is one agreed line. But this is exactly as was agreed on the 1st of December when they set up this, that on the 11th, so on the 1st of December, the two leaders said that they will meet in Geneva on the 9th. On the 11th, they would exchange, or they would present maps, and on the 12th, the conference convenes, and that's exactly what's happening. And it is in this, on this model that the two sides will see their optimal presentation of how they fit this volume to the map of the island of Cyprus.
So then,
and then on the timing.
Sorry, on the map, so then work might still be done on the map during the conference, correct? The final map.
Yes, in principle, yes.
With Lisa's indulgence, I will give the floor to the gentleman there, and then we will come to the housekeeping issues. Please, sir, and to the last questions from Jan.
Mustafa Alkan from Genç TV. I would like to ask that you said that this is the best chance here. So is there any possibility that we leave Geneva here with a date of a referendum? That's my first question. And my second question, if we don't leave here with the date of a referendum, is there any possibility that there will be a repeat of the international conference in the near future? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. And that's the second version, I would start there. We don't need to leave here with a date for a referendum to have a success, because it's perfectly possible that we leave very happily from here with a full understanding of what this is going to look like, but with the sense that let's now, under normal condition back in Cyprus, for instance, prepare a federal constitution, look into the constituent state constitutions, make other ways of extracting the political agreement into legal text, and also conduct certain other preparatory measures, and only then say time is ripe for a referendum, because after all, when you invite people to vote on something, they need to know what they vote about. So they need to see the deal. So there is no requirement for a date in order to have a successful conference. Of course, they might, but that's really not the main focus now. The main focus is to get to an understanding which then transforms into a comprehensive settlement. I do not think we're thinking about a new conference. I would rather say that we will allow this conference to take its necessary time. But since this is the moment, and as I said to an earlier question, I cannot see anything improving by waiting. So I think it's best to use this chance. And with this chance, I give that some space for what actually that means in, let's say, number of dates. No.
Okay, so I will take the last three questions, and then Jan Heberman, on behalf of ACNU, will close the list. I will start with the gentleman with the blue tie. Thank you.
Yeah, just a clarification. Nicolas Zanettos from Alpha TV. In the previous question regarding the maps and the conference, have you said that the maps will be on the table of the conference? I think that the conference is all about security and guarantees, right?
The international conference, well, the international conference on Cyprus will not deal with maps. That's correct.
The gentleman with the beard here. Yes.
Josh Kakouris from Politis newspaper. I'd like to ask, since IMF and the World Bank representatives are here and they've met with people from advisors regarding property and land, is there any, has this been assisted? Is there anything new when it comes to the financial viability of a solution? And is there anything new regarding the studies that IMF is supposed to have handed out a few months ago regarding the economies of a solution?
Thank you for that, because I would very strongly like to use your question to thank both the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the EBRD, the European Commission, and the European Central Bank, who have been extremely involved in exactly the issues you mentioned, very constructively so, with the sites under UN auspices, as agreed by the leaders, that the UN is the coordinator of the international support, but through us, they provide direct support to the sites. And this support has been very helpful in assuring that some of the chapters that are most advanced and basically largely finished on, for instance, economy and also EU matters, are not only agreed, but are agreed in such a way that what we are creating is exactly a viable, well-functional federation with fiscal discipline and an understanding of how they can come together without creating, new unnecessary costs, like, for instance, a bloated public service and so on. And so I think that has been very helpful. When it comes to the financing of the settlement and the so-called cost of a settlement, I say so-called, but because it's about getting support into Cyprus, which normally is a good thing. There has been some developments, yes, but I don't think I have anything to announce apart from the fact that the support has been constructive. And there is an interrelationship between finding a deal and finding the money for a deal. I think the idea that you can go around and collect money prior to an agreement is simply not possible. So you have to connect the eventual financial support to a breakthrough of a deal in order to get this financed. But I am not very worried. I think this is clearly possible, and good work has been done.
John.
Yes, good afternoon. John Zarakostas of France 24. I was wondering, sir, if you could elaborate if the 4 EU principles are ring-fenced in this agreement and there will not be deviations and carve-outs from the 4 principles of the EU. Thank you.
It has been a very important, it's been an imperative for us to ensure that, what we are doing is we are reunifying a country which, as a united federal republic, will be a full member of the European Union in full compliance with the principles enshrined in the EU, yes. And again, the European Commission has been very much involved. As you know, Mr. Juncker will be here, and High Representative Mogherini. But we also have a very good representative in Cyprus of Mr. Juncker, Mr. Peter van Nuffel, who is also here with a team who has been actively contributing to all those issues in the talks, which has EU dimensions to them, because we are fully aware, and it's been, I would actually say that there is nowhere where the degree of UN-EU participation is as strong as here, but that's also quite logical because we are dealing with a peace process in an EU member state, or what will be a full EU member state.
I'll take the last question from the President of ACNU, Jan Eberman.
Yes, good afternoon. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jan Herbermann. I'm the president of ACANU, which is the Association of Correspondents accredited here at the UN in Geneva. So I don't represent the traveling press and I don't represent the UN TV. First of all, many thanks for updating us on a regular basis. We really appreciate that. But I have to raise a serious question and a demand. ACANU has set up a pool for delivering and gathering images and pictures to the international press and to international media. This pool has been seriously discriminated against in the last couple of days. Today and yesterday, this pool didn't get any access to the talks. On Monday, the access of this pool was restricted, whereas the access for the official media and UN TV was given. So on 3 days in a row, the ACANU pool was discriminated against, and the traveling press wasn't, and the UN TV wasn't either. We would like to ask you to change this in order to make sure that the international media and the world will get to know what is going on here. You said this might be an historic moment or will be an historic moment, and it's the best opportunity to solve this problem. So we think that the international media should get fairly access to these talks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think on the way this is organized, I think I'll leave it to Sandra, but as a general principle, I think we should be as open as we possibly can within the realms of the necessary precautions for the confidentiality and talks and so on. But I would simply leave it to you to say what.
Thank you very much, Mr. Éincde. Thank you very much, Jan. Yes, I of course have been aware of this problem, and as you know, organizing pools in such a sensitive environment with so strict measures of who can get into the rooms or not, it's a very difficult exercise. We know that there have been problems, and we will do our best to avoid them tomorrow. And this brings me to the fact that, to the question of Lisa, we are going to send you out as soon as possible, but not later than in 2 hours, 3 hours time, a very detailed information for the media on what will be the media opportunities tomorrow. Basically, we will do our best with the agreement of Mr. Éincde and his office to allow a larger pool for the photo spray at the beginning of the conference. Arrivals will also be open to filming, and we will have a certain number of bilateral meetings, and for that, of course, the rule of having the official press of the United Nations and of the country that is meeting with the United Nations officials will be respected. So we will have all this into a comprehensive information, and we really make our best to have it, to get it to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Starting time.
Okay, so we have a certain number of arrivals. As I said, I can't already confirm absolutely the time of the arrivals, but they will have, normally the arrivals will be before 10 o'clock, but this is what we will confirm in our media arrangement note, and then we will have a series of bilateral meetings, and this obviously will be closed to photo sprays for the press of the dignitaries which are meeting in those events, in those occasions, and then we will have a larger pool for the beginning of the conference, which is at 11 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. 11, yes, 11, let me see, sorry, 11:15, 11:15. Sorry? 11:15, but this can change. So let me please go back to our people and to the office of Mr. Éincde to confirm you all this in writing as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Mr. Éincde, thank you so much for this press conference.
Thank you, and let me just say that while I'm not going to comment anything on the pool access and so on here, I was a general statement. I would say in the Cyprus talks we have been trying, also back in Cyprus, trying to be as accessible as we can and as transparent as we can, and sometimes the primary limitation is that we are maybe not supposed to say more than the sites themselves, because they are the ones who own the process and should be respected as the people who are the primary interlocutors. And to the best of my knowledge, there's been a lot of press engagement from the press spokesmen from the sites. And it's first, I am here now to give the information from the UN side, but of course what is most important is whether the people who are supposed to make this deal feel that they're getting closer to a deal. So I also point you a little bit in their attention directly.
And I think Mr. Éinde's presence here today and the other day really demonstrates and confirms this. Thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon.